The alarm systems on the distant Hope started screaming at exactly Oro 300 hours. Captain Zrix felt his scales tighten with fear as he rushed to the control room. His crew was already there, their reptilian faces showing the same worry he felt. The engine core was failing, and they were millions of miles from any Vulcan station. Zrix looked at the readouts and felt his heart sink. They had maybe 6 hours before life support failed completely. They were drifting in neutral space, the kind of place where ships disappeared and nobody asked questions. His communication officer, a young Vulcan named Kess, was already sending distress signals on all frequencies. The Vulcan were known across the galaxy as careful traders. They didn't take risks. They didn't trust easily. Zrix had spent 30 years in space, and he'd learned that most species would ignore a distress call unless there was profit in answering. Still, they had to try. 3 hours passed. The temperature inside the ship was dropping. The backup systems were struggling. Zrix gathered his crew of 5 and told them to prepare for the worst. They would put on their emergency suits and hope that anyone would find them before their air ran out. Then Kess shouted from his station. Someone was responding to their signal. A ship was changing course to reach them. Zrix felt a small flutter of hope, quickly crushed by caution. Who would actually come? And what would they want in return? The ship that appeared on their sensors was human. The Morning Star, a cargo vessel that looked like it had seen better days. Zrix knew little about humans except that they were relatively new to space travel and had a reputation for being unpredictable. Some species said humans were dangerous. Others said they were helpful. Nobody seemed to agree. The communication channel crackled to life. A human voice came through, speaking in standard trade language with a thick accent. "This is Captain Danny Foster of the Morning Star. We got your distress call. Looks like you folks need some help with your engines. We're coming alongside now." Zrix activated the video link. The human captain was a middle-aged male with graying hair and tired eyes. Beside him stood a female human with oil-stained coveralls and a friendly smile. The captain gestured to her. "This is Lisa Grant, my engineer. She's going to take a look at your systems if that's okay with you." Zrix hesitated. Letting aliens onto his ship went against every protocol. But they were dying out here, and this human wasn't asking for payment or making demands. He was simply offering help. Zrix gave his permission. The docking process was smooth. When the airlock opened, Captain Danny and Lisa came through carrying toolboxes and equipment. Lisa barely glanced at the Vulcan crew before heading straight for the engine room. Danny stayed in the control area looking at their systems with interest. "Your distress signal said engine core failure," Danny said, pulling out a scanning device. "Lisa's the best engineer I've ever worked with. If anyone can fix this, she can. Meanwhile, you folks look cold. You got a galley on this ship?" Zrix pointed toward the crew quarters. Danny nodded and disappeared, returning minutes later with containers of hot soup from the Morning Star. He handed them out to each Vulcan crew member without ceremony. "Not sure if this is compatible with your biology, but it's hot and it's food. Figured it might help." Kess took the container carefully. The soup smelled strange but not unpleasant. He took a small sip and felt warmth spread through his body. It wasn't Vulcan food, but it was good. Around him, his crewmates were doing the same, their scales gradually relaxing. Danny sat down at one of the control stations, not like he owned it, but like he'd been invited. "So what brings you folks out to this part of space?" For the next hour, while Lisa worked in the engine room, Danny talked with the Vulcan crew. He asked about their trade routes, their homeworld, their families. He told them about Earth, about his own family waiting for him at home, about the cargo of farming equipment he was delivering to a colony world. He talked like they were people having a normal conversation, not strangers from different species meeting in the middle of nowhere. Kess found himself relaxing. This human didn't seem dangerous. He seemed genuinely interested in them as individuals. When Kess mentioned he had a sister named Tara who worked in the Defense Force, Danny smiled and said his own daughter was in the military too. He understood the worry of having family and dangerous jobs. Lisa emerged from the engine room after 6 hours, covered in more oil and sweat than before. "Got it running," she announced. "Your cooling system had a cascade failure in the secondary pumps. I patched it with parts from our spare inventory, but you'll need proper replacements at your next station. The repair should hold for about 2 weeks if you don't push the engines too hard." Zrix felt relief wash over him. They would survive. They could make it home. He reached for his credit chip to discuss payment, but Danny waved him off. "No charge," the human captain said simply. "You folks needed help, we helped." "That's how it works," Zrick stared at him. "But the parts, the time, you delayed your own delivery schedule." Danny shrugged. "Parts can be replaced. Schedules can be adjusted. You can't replace people." "Well, you can, but you shouldn't." He grinned at his own joke. Lisa was packing up her tools. As she passed Kes, she paused and pulled something from her pocket. It was a small metal wrench, worn but sturdy. She pressed it into his hand. "Here, keep this. It's a good tool. Saved my life more than once. But more importantly, I want you to remember something." Kes looked at the tool, then at her face. "Remember what?" "That somewhere out here there are people who care whether you live or die. Even if we just met. Even if we never see each other again. You mattered enough for us to stop and help. Don't forget that." Before Kes could respond, Lisa and Danny were heading back to their airlock. Danny turned at the door and gave a casual wave. "Safe travels, Captain Zrix. Maybe we'll cross paths again someday." The Morning Star undocked and continued on its route. Zrix and his crew watched it go, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. Humans had saved them, refused payment, and treated them like the rescue was the most natural thing in the world. Kes looked down at the wrench in his hand. It was just a tool, but it felt like something more. A promise, maybe. Or proof that Lisa's words were true. He put it in his pocket carefully. When the distant Hope finally made it back to Velkin space, Zrix filed his report. He included everything about the rescue, about the humans who helped without asking for anything in return. Most officials read it with skepticism. Humans didn't act that way, they said. There must have been an angle, a hidden motive. But Kes knew better. He told his sister Tara about the rescue when he got home. He showed her the wrench and repeated Lisa's words. Tara listened carefully, her tactical mind analyzing the story. She'd heard reports about humans before, conflicting accounts that never quite made sense. But her brother's story had the ring of truth to it. What kind of species risks their schedule and uses their resources for strangers? Tara asked. Kes turned the wrench over in his hands, feeling its weight. "I don't know, but I think we should pay attention to them. Something tells me humans are going to be important." He had no idea how right he was. 6 months after the rescue, Kes was stationed on Selene 4, a small Velkin colony world near the border of neutral space. It was supposed to be a quiet assignment, a place where nothing much happened. That changed when the Kravik Empire decided they wanted the planet. The Kravik were known across the galaxy as conquerors. They enslaved other species, stripped worlds of resources, and crushed anyone who resisted. They'd been watching Velkin space for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Selene 4, with its small population and limited defenses, was that moment. Kes was in the command center when the attack began. 15 Kravik warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately started bombing the colony's defensive positions. The Velkin had only 3 small defense ships, and they were destroyed within minutes. The planet's shields held for a while, but everyone knew they wouldn't last long. The colony administrator sent distress calls to the Velkin homeworld. Help was coming, but it would take 5 days to arrive. The Kravik commander sent a message making his intentions clear. Surrender immediately or watch the civilian shelters get destroyed one by one. He gave them 2 hours to decide. Kes helped coordinate the evacuation of civilians to the underground shelters. There were over 2,000 Velkin on Selene 4, including many families with children. The shelters were strong, but they wouldn't survive sustained bombardment. As he worked, Kes felt the wrench in his pocket, the one Lisa had given him. He thought about what she'd said, about people caring whether he lived or died. The communication officer suddenly shouted across the command center. "Sir, we're receiving a response to our distress call." "It's not from the homeworld. It's a human ship." Kes ran to the communication station. On the screen was a human male with dark hair and determined eyes. He wore the uniform of Earth's Exploration Service. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship Wanderer. We received your distress signal. We're 3 days out, but we're coming at maximum speed. Hold on. We will get there." The colony administrator looked confused. "The humans? But we have no alliance with them. Why would they come?" Kes stared at the screen where Jake's face had been. He touched the wrench through his pocket. "Because that's what they do." 3 days of terror followed. The Kravik commander was patient, systematically destroying the colony's infrastructure. He targeted power plants, water facilities, and communication arrays. He wanted the Velkin to feel helpless before he started on the civilian shelters. Each day he sent a message asking if they were ready to surrender. Each day the administrator refused. On the third day the Wanderer arrived. It was a single ship against 15 Kravik warships. Kes watched on the sensors as the human vessel dropped into normal space, and immediately positioned itself between the Kravik fleet and the planet. It should have been suicide. Jake's voice came over the open channel, directed at the Kravik commander. "This is Captain Jake Morrison. You will cease your attack on Selene 4 immediately. These people are under our protection." The Kravik commander laughed. "Under your protection? You have one ship. I have 15. Leave now and I'll let you live." "Not going to happen," Jake replied calmly. "See, the thing about humans is that we're really stubborn when it comes to protecting people. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to back off and let us evacuate these civilians, or we're going to make this very difficult for you." The Kravik opened fire. The Wanderer's shields absorbed the first hits while launching its own counterattack. The human ship was faster than the Kravik expected. It darted between the warships, targeting their weapon systems with precision strikes. It couldn't destroy them, but it could slow them down. While the Wanderer kept the Kravik busy, Jake sent shuttles to the planet's surface. Kes coordinated landing zones near the shelters. The first shuttle that touched down was piloted by a human woman named Amy Peters. She opened the doors and started waving Velkin civilians inside. "Come on, let's move," Amy shouted. "We don't have much time. Grab what you can carry and get on board." Kes helped load civilians onto the shuttles. Children, elderly, families with whatever possessions they could grab. The humans worked without stopping, making trip after trip between the planet and their ship. The Wanderer's cargo bays were filling up quickly, far beyond their normal capacity. A human male in medical gear named Chris Baker set up a triage area in one of the cargo bays. He treated injured Velkin with the same care he would give to humans, his hands steady and skilled. When a young Velkin child cried in fear, Chris knelt down and showed her pictures of his own kids on Earth, making her smile despite the chaos around them. The Kravik commander realized what was happening and redirected his fire toward the planet's surface, trying to destroy the shuttles before they could evacuate everyone. One shelter took a direct hit, its shields failing. The building started to collapse with over 40 Velkin still inside. A human security team led by Nicole Hayes was loading civilians nearby. They saw the shelter collapse and didn't hesitate. Nicole and her team ran into the burning building, pulling out survivors one by one. Two humans, Kevin Price and Laura Stone, held up a collapsing support beam while Nicole got the last group of children out. The beam gave way before they could escape, crushing them both. Kes saw it happen. He screamed for them, but it was too late. The two humans were dead, sacrificed so that Velkin children they'd never met before could live. Nicole emerged from the wreckage carrying a Velkin child in each arm, her face streaked with tears and ash. The evacuation continued for 12 hours. The Wanderer took hit after hit, its shields failing in several sections. Jake refused to leave until every civilian was on board. Amy coordinated the final shuttle runs while the ship's systems screamed warnings. Chris worked until he collapsed from exhaustion, then got up and kept working. Kes was on the last shuttle to leave. As it lifted off, a Kravik fighter targeted them. The shot would have destroyed the shuttle, killing all 30 Velkin on board. But Jake positioned the Wanderer directly in the path of the blast, taking the hit on his ship's already damaged hull. The explosion tore through the command deck and Kes saw debris fly everywhere. When the shuttle docked with the Wanderer, Kes ran to the command deck. Jake was lying on the floor, his left side badly injured from falling debris. Amy was at the helm, guiding the ship away from Selene 4 with the Kravik fleet in pursuit. Nicole was securing the injured captain while trying to coordinate defense from her own injuries. Kes knelt beside Jake. The human captain opened his eyes and managed a weak smile. "Did we get everyone?" 847 people, Kes said, his voice shaking. "You got everyone. Good," Jake whispered. "That's good." The Wanderer limped away from Selene 4, its hull breached in multiple places, its engines barely functional. Behind them, the Kravik continued firing but couldn't catch up. The damaged human ship had enough speed left to reach the safety of neutral space. In the cargo bays, hundreds of Velkin civilians huddled together, saved by a crew of 40 humans who hadn't hesitated to risk everything. Chris moved among them, treating injuries and offering comfort. Amy kept the ship moving forward through sheer skill and determination. Nicole organized the survivors, making sure everyone had space and supplies. Kes sat in the cargo bay with the other survivors, trying to process what had happened. The humans had lost 2 of their crew. Their captain was badly injured. Their ship was barely holding together, and they'd done it all for people they'd never met, from a species they had no alliance with. An elderly Velkin woman sitting next to him spoke softly. "Why did they come? We're nothing to them." Kes pulled out Lisa's wrench, the one he'd carried for 6 months. He remembered her words about people caring whether he lived or died. He thought about Jake taking a blast meant for their shuttle. He thought about Kevin and Laura dying to save children. He thought about Chris treating Velkin patients like they were his own people. "I don't think we're nothing to them," Kes said quietly. "I think that's the whole point. To humans, we're not nothing. We're people who needed help, and that was enough." The Wanderer continued its slow journey to safety, carrying its precious cargo of survivors. In the command center, Jake drifted in and out of consciousness, but he kept asking the same question. "Everyone okay?" "Did everyone make it?" Amy answered him every time. "They made it, Jake. Because of you, they all made it." The news of what happened at Selene 4 spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every species with access to galactic communication networks knew the story. A single human ship had faced down 15 Kravik warships to save a colony of aliens they had no obligation to protect. 2 humans had died. Their captain was in critical condition. And they'd saved every single civilian. The reactions were mixed and complicated. The Velkin government immediately sent medical ships to help the Wanderer, offering the best care their doctors could provide. The Galactic Council issued a statement acknowledging the incident, but took no action, citing their neutrality protocols. The Kravik Empire sent an official complaint, demanding that humans be punished for interfering in their legitimate military operations. Jake spent 3 weeks in a Velkin medical facility, his injuries slowly healing. The Velkin doctors worked around the clock to save him, calling in specialists from across their space. They told him he was lucky to be alive. Jake said he didn't feel lucky, thinking about Kevin and Laura who weren't coming home. The human government called the Wanderer's crew back to Earth for an official inquiry. Some politicians were furious, claiming Jake had violated orders and risked starting an interstellar war. Others defended his actions, saying he'd done the right thing regardless of politics. The debate filled news channels for weeks. Jake stood before the inquiry board, his left arm still in a support brace. When asked why he'd disobeyed his orders to avoid military conflicts, his answer was simple and direct. "Because I heard that children were dying and I had the ability to help them." Nothing else mattered in that moment. One of the officials leaned forward. "You risked your ship and crew for people we have no alliance with. You started an incident with the Kravik Empire. 2 of your crew members are dead. How do you justify these actions?" Jake's voice was quiet but firm. "Kevin and Laura didn't die because I made a mistake. They died saving children. If I could go back knowing what I know now, I'd make the same choice. And so would they. That's what being human means to me." The inquiry dragged on, but public opinion on Earth was overwhelmingly supportive. Millions of humans watched the proceedings, and the message was clear. They were proud of what Jake and his crew had done. Memorials for Kevin and Laura appeared in cities across Earth, flowers and messages left by strangers who wanted to honor their sacrifice. On the Velkin homeworld, Kes recovered from his own minor injuries and found himself unable to stop thinking about the humans who'd saved him. He requested permission to attend the memorial service for Kevin and Laura on Earth. His sister Tara immediately said she would come with him. To everyone's surprise, 50 other survivors from Selene 4 also asked to make the journey. The human government approved the request. When Kes and the other Velkin arrived on Earth, they were treated with respect and kindness. People welcomed them, offering help and asking if they needed anything. It was overwhelming for Kes, who was used to the more reserved nature of his own people. The memorial service was held in a large park. Thousands of humans attended along with the Velkin survivors. Kevin's husband spoke about his partner's love for helping others. Laura's mother shared stories of her daughter's adventurous spirit. Amy, Chris, and Nicole stood together, their faces showing the grief of losing teammates and friends. When it was time for others to speak, Kes stood up. His hands were shaking and he could feel the weight of the wrench in his pocket. He walked to the front and faced the crowd of humans and Velkin. "My name is Kes," he began, speaking in careful English. "6 months ago, a human captain and engineer saved my ship when we were dying in space. They refused payment. They treated us like we mattered. A few weeks ago, humans came to save my colony when we were under attack. They didn't have to come. We're not your allies. We're not your responsibility, but you came anyway." He pulled out the wrench that Lisa had given him. This was a gift from Lisa Grant, the engineer who saved us the first time. She told me to remember that somewhere out here, there are people who care whether I live or die. I carry this every day to remind myself of that truth. Kes looked at the pictures of Kevin and Laura displayed at the memorial. These 2 humans died saving Velkin children. They ran into a collapsing building, and they held up the support so those children could escape. They gave their lives for people they'd just met, from a species that wasn't their own. His voice grew stronger. "I've been trying to understand why humans do this, why you help without asking for anything in return, why you risk your lives for strangers. I think I'm starting to understand. Humans have a concept that doesn't translate well into our language. You call it family, but it's not just about blood relations. It's about choosing who matters to you and then protecting them no matter what." Tara stood beside her brother. "When my brother told me about his first encounter with humans, I analyzed it from a military perspective. It didn't make tactical sense. But now I see that humans operate on a different kind of logic. You decide someone is worth protecting and then you follow through even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard," Kes continued. "Kevin and Laura are heroes, not just to the Velkin people they saved, but to everyone who believes that life has value regardless of where it comes from. They showed us what it means to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And I want every human here to know that the Velkin people will never forget what you did for us." The speech was recorded and shared across the galactic networks. Within days, it had been viewed billions of times by dozens of species. The message resonated with many who had experienced human compassion firsthand. Species that had been helped by human medical teams, rescued by human ships, or simply shown kindness by human traders, started sharing their own stories. But not everyone was moved by the speech. The Kravik Empire watched with growing concern. They saw human empathy not as a virtue, but as a dangerous unpredictability. The Kravik operated on clear hierarchies of power. The strong ruled, the weak submitted. Humans didn't fit into that worldview. They helped the weak, which disrupted the natural order. Other powerful species also grew nervous. If humans kept interfering to help others, it would complicate everyone's plans for expansion and influence. Several governments started monitoring human activities more closely, trying to predict what they would do next. On Earth, the inquiry finally concluded. Jake and his crew were officially cleared of wrongdoing. More than that, their actions inspired a new policy. The human government announced the Guardian Initiative, a program dedicated to responding to distress calls and protecting innocent people from aggression. Regardless of species or political considerations, ships were reassigned. New vessels were commissioned. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers who wanted to be part of the Guardian Initiative. The message from humanity was clear and direct. If you threaten innocent people, humans will respond. If you need help, humans will come. Kes and the other Velkin remained on Earth for several weeks, learning about human culture and building friendships with the people they met. When it was time to return home, Amy gave Kes a communication device tuned to human frequencies. "Stay in touch," she said. "You're part of our story now." Back on the Velkin homeworld, Kes and Tara presented their government with a proposal. An alliance with humanity, something the cautious Velkin had never offered to another species before. The debate lasted for weeks, with many officials arguing that such an alliance would drag them into conflicts that weren't their concern. Tara addressed the government council with military precision. "The humans didn't hesitate to help us because we were their allies. They helped us because it was the right thing to do. If we want to live in a galaxy where that kind of behavior is valued and protected, then we need to support the ones who practice it. The Kravik won't stop with Selene 4, they'll keep expanding. Next time we might not have humans nearby to help, unless we make sure they are." The vote was close, but it passed. The Velkin would offer humanity a formal alliance, the first in their history. When the news reached Earth, there was celebration mixed with a sense of responsibility. Humans understood that they were being trusted with something precious, and they took that trust seriously. Kes was promoted and assigned to work on joint training programs with human forces. Tara transferred to work with human security teams, learning their tactics while teaching them Velkan defensive strategies. The wrench remained in Kes's pocket, a reminder of where it all started. Other species watched these developments with interest and concern. Quietly, a few began reaching out to humanity. The aquatic Shorel sent diplomatic messages. The insectoid Chitrix requested meetings. Even some former Kravik subject races made secret contact, hoping for help in gaining their freedom. The galaxy was changing, and humans were at the center of that change. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they decided that protecting others was worth the cost. And once humans decided you were family, they didn't let go. The Kravik Empire did not respond well to the alliance between humans and Velkan. For generations, they had expanded their territory through intimidation and overwhelming force. Species either submitted or were crushed. The idea that someone would actively oppose them, especially for no apparent gain, confused and angered them. 3 months after the alliance was formalized, the Kravik Supreme Commander sent a message to Earth. It was broadcast on all frequencies, meant to be heard by everyone. The message was simple: cease all interference in Kravik expansion or face military consequences. They believed humans, being relatively new to space and possessing a modest fleet, would back down when confronted with real power. The human response surprised them. Instead of retreating, Earth's government announced an expansion of the Guardian Initiative. More ships were commissioned. Training programs were intensified. Defense agreements were offered to any species that wanted protection from aggression. The message back to the Kravik was equally simple: we don't abandon our family, and our family is growing. Jake, now fully recovered from his injuries, was given command of a larger vessel called the Horizon. It was designed specifically for the Guardian Initiative, with enhanced shields, faster engines, and the ability to carry more refugees if necessary. His crew of 80 included both humans and Velkan, the first truly integrated military unit in either species' history. Kes served as Jake's tactical advisor, bringing Velkan defensive strategies to complement human offensive tactics. They worked well together, having developed a deep respect during the Selene 4 incident. Jake trusted Kes's judgment completely, and Kes had learned to appreciate the human willingness to take calculated risks. Amy left active ship duty to become an ambassador, working to formalize the growing coalition of species that wanted to stand against aggression. She traveled constantly, meeting with governments and explaining that the alliance wasn't about conquest or control. It was about mutual protection and the simple principle that innocent people deserve to live without fear. Her message resonated with many species. The Shorel, an aquatic race that had lost 3 colony worlds to Kravik attacks, were the first to officially join. Their submarine-style ships brought unique capabilities to the coalition. The Chitrix followed, their insectoid biology giving them advantages in certain types of combat that humans lacked. Chris established the first human-alien joint medical facility on a neutral station. He trained doctors from multiple species in cross-species medicine, creating a network of healers who could respond to disasters anywhere in the sector. When a plague broke out on a mining colony, Chris and his team arrived within hours, working without rest to save lives regardless of species. Nicole earned a reputation that spread across the galaxy. She trained the first integrated defense units, teaching both tactics and philosophy. Her most famous lesson was simple: we don't leave family behind. It didn't matter if someone was human, Velkan, Shorel, or Chitrix. If they were on your team, you protected them with your life. She told her students a story about Kevin and Laura every training session, making sure new recruits understood what they were joining. They died holding up a building so children could escape, Nicole would say. They weren't related to those children. They'd never even seen them before that day. But in that moment, those children were family. That's what we do. We decide someone is worth protecting and then we follow through. Tara worked alongside Nicole, bringing Velkan precision and planning to complement human adaptability. They became close friends, often seen together reviewing tactical scenarios or training new recruits. Other species watched in fascination as two beings from different worlds worked together so seamlessly. More species began reaching out quietly, Some were current Kravik subjects looking for a way to freedom. Others were neutral parties who saw the coalition as protection against future aggression. A few were even former enemies of either humans or Velkin, who realized that old conflicts mattered less than current survival. The coalition grew to include 12 species within a year. Each brought unique abilities and perspectives. The Draven offered their advanced sensor technology. The Quell shared their knowledge of stellar navigation. The Minor, despite their small size, were brilliant engineers who could repair almost anything. What unified them wasn't military strength or economic advantage. It was the simple principle that Jake had stated at his inquiry: when people need help, you help them. The coalition operated on voluntary cooperation, with no species dominating the others. Decisions were made collectively, with every voice given equal weight. The Kravik watched all of this with growing alarm. Their intelligence reports indicated that humans possessed no superweapons or overwhelming technological advantages. Their ships were good but not exceptional. Their weapons were effective but not superior. What they had instead was something the Kravik couldn't understand or counter: an unwillingness to abandon those they'd sworn to protect, combined with an expanding definition of who counted as theirs. In Kravik culture, loyalty was based on hierarchy. You protected those above you because they had power. You controlled those below you because you had power. Horizontal loyalty, the kind between equals, was seen as weakness. The idea of protecting someone weaker than yourself with no expectation of gain was incomprehensible. Jake and Kess discussed this during a planning session on the horizon. They were reviewing potential Kravik attack vectors, trying to predict where the Empire would strike next. "They're going to come after the Velkin homeworld," Kess said, studying the tactical displays. "It's the heart of our alliance. If they break us there, they think the coalition will fall apart." Jake nodded slowly. "They don't understand that breaking one part won't stop the rest. That's not how family works." "Will the others really fight for us?" Kess asked. "I mean truly fight, not just provide support from a distance." Jake looked at him seriously. "When the Shorel station was attacked last month, did you hesitate to send help?" "No," Kess admitted. "We went immediately." "And when the Chitrix colony had that reactor failure, did Chris hesitate?" "He was on a ship within the hour." "That's your answer," Jake said. "We've all chosen each other. The Kravik think loyalty can be broken by showing superior force. They don't understand that the loyalty we've built gets stronger under pressure, not weaker." The coalition continued to grow and train together. Joint exercises became common, with ships from different species learning to coordinate their movements and tactics. Communication protocols were standardized. Medical teams practiced cross-species emergency care. Engineers shared knowledge about different ship designs and repair techniques. Nicole ran simulation after simulation, preparing her units for the battle she knew was coming. She pushed them hard, harder than some thought necessary, but she'd seen what the Kravik were capable of at Selene 4. She knew that when the real fight came, her people would need every bit of training she could give them. In quieter moments, she visited the memorial for Kevin and Laura that had been built on the horizon. It was a simple thing, just their pictures and names, but it reminded everyone what they were fighting for. Sometimes she would find Kess there, standing silently. They never talked much during these visits. They didn't need to. 6 months after the Kravik ultimatum, their fleets began gathering near Velkin space. Intelligence reports counted over 300 warships assembling, the largest Kravik force ever seen in one place. The target was obvious. They would attack the Velkin homeworld with overwhelming force, intending to destroy the coalition by eliminating its founding member. Amy sent urgent messages to all coalition species. Jake prepared the horizon and requested that all available Guardian Initiative ships move toward Velkin space. Chris began stockpiling medical supplies and preparing triage centers. Nicole drilled her units day and night. The Velkin government watched the Kravik fleet build up and felt fear. Even with their coalition allies, they would be heavily outnumbered. The Kravik had 300 ships. The Velkin could muster 70. The humans had 20 in the sector. The other coalition species combined could provide maybe 40 more. The math was terrifying, but something else was happening that the Kravik didn't know about. In quiet corners of the galaxy, on stations and colony worlds among species that humans had helped in small, forgotten incidents, a message was spreading. The Velkin homeworld was under threat. The people who had decided to protect the helpless were now the ones who needed help. And slowly, carefully, ships began to move. Old freighter captains who remembered human medics saving their crew, colony administrators who recalled human engineers fixing their failing systems, defense forces from minor worlds who had been given shield technology by the Coalition. They came not because they were ordered to, not because they expected payment, but because they remembered what it felt like when someone decided they were worth saving. Kess stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the tactical displays as the Kravik fleet moved into position. Jake stood beside him, calm and focused. Around them, the crew prepared for battle, human and Velkin working side by side. "They're coming," Kess said quietly. Jake touched the communication panel. "All ships, this is Captain Jake." The Kravik fleet commander stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Where there should have been a small, frightened defense force, there were hundreds of ships, species he'd never heard of, vessels of strange designs all positioning themselves around the Velkin homeworld. His force of 300 warships still outnumbered the defenders, but not by the overwhelming margin he'd expected. He opened a channel to his subordinates. "Identify all hostile vessels." Where did they come from? His intelligence officer worked frantically through the data. "Sir, we're seeing ships from 40 different species. Most are minor worlds and independent colonies. Many aren't even part of the formal coalition. They just showed up. Why?" the commander demanded. "What possible interest do they have in defending Velkin space?" The intelligence officer hesitated. "According to our files, most of them received assistance from humans at some point. Medical aid, engineering support, defense from raiders. The humans helped them, and now they're returning the favor." The Kravik commander felt something he rarely experienced: doubt. His empire operated on fear and overwhelming force, but these ships hadn't come because they were forced to. They came because they chose to. He didn't understand that kind of motivation, which made it dangerous. On the horizon, Jake watched the Allied ships take up defensive positions. Kess stood beside him, tears running down his scaled face as he read the identification signals. Ships from species the Velkin barely knew coming to defend his homeworld because humans had helped them first. "There's a cargo ship here," Kess said, his voice breaking. "The Morning Star. Danny and Lisa came." Jake smiled. "Of course they did. That's what family does." Amy's voice came through on the Coalition command frequency. She was coordinating from the Velkin capital, working with representatives from dozens of species. "All ships, this is Ambassador Amy Peters. We're not here to conquer or to prove superiority. We're here because no one should face oppression alone. Today we show the Kravik Empire what happens when you threaten family." The Kravik fleet moved forward, still confident in their numbers and firepower. They opened fire simultaneously, 300 warships unleashing devastating attacks on the defensive line. The Coalition ships absorbed the hits, their shields flaring bright against the darkness of space. The horizon led the counterattack. Jake's voice was calm as he gave orders, directing ships to focus fire on specific Kravik vessels. Kess coordinated with Velkin defense forces, his tactical precision complementing Jake's aggressive style. Around them, the crew worked with practiced efficiency, humans and Velkin moving as one unit. Tara's voice came through from the planet's main defense station. "Nicole, they're trying to flank us on the southern approach. We need reinforcements there." Nicole was already moving, her integrated defense unit responding instantly. Ships from 3 different species followed her lead, trusting her judgment without hesitation. They intercepted the Kravik flanking force, and the battle became a chaotic swirl of energy blasts and maneuvering vessels. The Shoral submarine-style cruisers proved devastating in the confusion. They could dive in and out of combat at unexpected angles, their weapons hitting Kravik shields from directions the enemy didn't anticipate. The Chitrix hive fighters swarmed around larger vessels, their coordinated attacks overwhelming Kravik targeting systems. But the Kravik had numbers and power. They focused their fire on the larger Coalition ships, trying to break through to the planet below. The horizon took multiple direct hits, its shields failing in several sections. Jake ordered all non-essential crew to the protected areas, but he and Kess remained on the bridge, directing the defense. A massive Kravik battleship pushed through the lines, heading directly for the Velkin capital city. Its weapons locked onto the civilian population centers below, preparing to fire. The Coalition ships tried to intercept, but they were too far away. except for one ship. The Wanderer, still carrying scars from Selene 4, positioned itself directly between the battleship and the planet. Its captain, a newly promoted officer named Peter Walsh, opened a channel to the Kravik ship. "You want to fire on civilians? You'll have to go through us first." The Kravik battleship fired. The Wanderer's shields held for 3 seconds before failing. The hull breached in multiple places, but those 3 seconds were enough. The Horizon and 5 Vulcan cruisers arrived, their combined fire crippling the battleship before it could fire again. Chris's voice came through the medical channels. "Wanderer is badly damaged. They have casualties. I'm sending medical teams now." Jake watched the tactical display, his heart heavy. More ships were taking damage. More people were dying, but they were holding the line. The Kravik couldn't reach the planet, couldn't bombard the civilians, couldn't break through the defense that so many species had come together to provide. Then something unexpected happened. In the Kravik fleet itself, ships began breaking formation. Small vessels, support craft, even a few warships. They stopped firing and began moving away from the battle. The Kravik commander screamed orders at them, but they didn't respond. Kess accessed the communications being sent by those ships. His eyes widened. "Jake, those are subject races. Species the Kravik conquered. They're refusing to fight." One of the defecting ships sent a message on open channels. "We've watched you. We've seen what you do for each other. You fight for those who can't fight for themselves. You protect the weak instead of exploiting them. You've shown us that there's another way. We won't help the Kravik anymore. We choose you." More ships followed. Within minutes, 20% of the Kravik fleet had either defected or simply stopped fighting. The Kravik commander tried to maintain order, but the damage was done. His overwhelming numerical advantage was disappearing as his own forces abandoned him. Jake seized the opportunity. All coalition ships concentrated push on their command vessel. Take out their leadership. The coalition forces rallied, focusing their attacks on the Kravik flagship. The commander tried to retreat, but he was surrounded. His ship took hit after hit until its shields collapsed and its weapons went dark. He had no choice but to surrender. The rest of the Kravik fleet broke apart, some ships fleeing, others surrendering, still others joining the defecting forces. The battle was over. The Vulcan homeworld was safe, but the cost had been high. The coalition had lost 30% of its fleet. Hundreds were dead, thousands more injured. The Horizon's medical bay was overwhelmed with casualties from multiple species. Chris worked until he physically couldn't stand anymore, then kept working while sitting down. Jake's left arm was broken again, injured when a console exploded near him. He refused treatment until every injured crew member had been seen. Kess stayed on the bridge coordinating rescue operations for damaged ships, his voice hoarse from giving orders. Nicole's defense unit had taken heavy casualties. She sat in the debris of their command post, surrounded by injured soldiers from 4 different species. All of them people she'd trained and fought beside. They'd held their position against overwhelming odds, and though many were hurt, they'd all survived. She radioed to Jake. "We held the line, sir. We didn't leave anyone behind." Over the next days and weeks, the full scale of what had happened became clear. The Kravik Empire's expansion had been stopped for the first time in decades. Multiple subject races had declared independence, inspired by what they'd witnessed at the Vulcan homeworld. The coalition had proven that species working together could stand against aggression. The victory was celebrated, but with deep awareness of its price. Memorial services were held for the fallen from dozens of species. Each one honored individuals who had died protecting others, who had stood beside beings they'd barely known because it was the right thing to do. Jake attended every service he could, his arm in a cast, standing to honor the dead. At one memorial, he spoke briefly. They came from different worlds, spoke different languages, and looked nothing like each other. But they were family. They chose to stand together. And because of that choice, billions of innocent people are alive today. That's what happens when you decide someone is family. You stand beside them no matter what. In the aftermath, the coalition formally established itself as the Coalition of Free Worlds. The charter was simple. Defend those who cannot defend themselves and never abandon those you've sworn to protect. Every species had equal voice in decisions. No one dominated. It was voluntary cooperation based on shared values rather than hierarchy or power. Humanity didn't lead the coalition, but they'd inspired it. Other species saw how humans operated, how they valued every life regardless of origin, and wanted to be part of something that operated on those principles. The Velkin, Shorel, Kittrix, and dozens of others worked together to build something new in the galaxy. A massive memorial was constructed in orbit around the Velkin homeworld, visible from the surface. It listed every being who had died defending others during the battle, regardless of species. At its center was a phrase written in 40 different languages. Family isn't who you're born to, it's who you choose to stand beside. Kess, now an admiral, oversaw the memorial's dedication. He wore his uniform with pride, the wrench Lisa had given him attached to his belt where everyone could see it. Beside him stood Jake, serving as the